onto a figure, and when we start a figure, we're always starting from a line of action, and working with this is a line of action that I'm going to consider goes from as trying to take the line of action and convert it. Here's like a kind of basic, or like here's a line of action. Here's the angle of the hips. This hip, because it's high, it holds the weight, and so the leg drops down to the ground. Here I've got an other leg dropping down to the ground. Not a very likely gesture for almost anything. Okay, much better. Here's a line of action moving into, there's the shoulder, the tilt of the shoulders, arm off the shoulder. How far down does it go? It's really up to you. But one thing we know is that this arm will go less far. Okay? Portrait. Okay, so we start a figure drawing in this place, and it starts to tell us the story of the pose. This is a highly creative stage of the drawing where you're starting to look around for what's possible to say here, and I'm just using a very classical contrapposto to talk about to begin a figure from. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to start to look for where the forms are, like where and what direction the forms go, and then we pass back to, so the head direction, I could take the head and I could turn it. You see that takes the eyes and it sends the whole head gesture off in that direction. Or I could do this and I could turn the head. Now that turns the head in that direction. Or I could do this. And that turns the head to look upwards. So the choice is really mine, like what I decide, how I decide, and here's how I control it with the sagittal and transverse plane. I think I'll try and have it go that way. Which direction do I want the chest pointing in? If I think one nice move is to simply counter the volume that preceded. So if I take the chest, and now you see how I've taken the chest volume and I'm insinuating a turn in this direction. And now I want to take the hip direction and I'm going to push it. I want to take the hip direction and push it the other way. And see if it feels good. Sometimes it can feel really forced, sometimes ideas they're not great ideas, So, okay, so I've got the hip. Now, I'm going to have to eliminate now the line of action and start looking at this new set of volumes that I'm starting to work with. And I'm not loving what's going on with the hip direction. At this point, let's say that this hip is high and this is low. Okay, and the head direction has come off in that way. And so the hip direction, what happens if I turn the hip direction to go along with so this perspective between this and this, can you see how the height of my angle of view is about there? Okay. Let's seek the volumes of the leg and notice how I'm just looking for here's, actually I'm looking down into this leg, and the volume has to run like this. This leg might be coming upwards. I'm starting to suggest the contours, and I'm starting to suggest the volumes. Down to the foot, down to the foot, okay? Line of action, which culminates in the foot. There's the bridge that passes over the foot from ankle to ankle. Here is the bridge that passes over the foot from ankle to ankle. That foot is going to be divided, okay? All right. Looking for the volume, the neck volume, and the neck volume sits on the front plane, so notice the tilt of what I drew underneath there was the connection of the neck to the chest, okay? And sketching, here's the technique I taught you guys that came out of Loomis for sketching the face, the circle, and then I'm going to cut that circle, come across, and this line will change direction, right? So this is a nice circle portion, but there it becomes really straight. From this point, from the center line, that's where the jaw comes from. Here's the nose, the jaw comes down and connect through here, and we're going to see a bottom plane of the jaw. Here's a jaw, and there's the jaw's bottom plane. Down and over and up, and that's the underside of the jaw, okay? From there to there. There's a block of the head, okay? So the head was constructed like this, circle. There was a center line had already started, and I had already positioned that line, okay? So the next thing that I did was I cut the head, the side planes, right, which takes this and it changes the shape of it. Here's the coronal, double down from this point to this point and that point down. That forms the bottom of the jaw, connection, 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 okay, over. The ear sits in this space right there. This is the brow ridge. Okay, so that's boom, boom, boom. Okay, there's a structure of a head. Here's the neck dropping down and connecting into the body. I'm going to put a front plane. I'm going to put a sagittal line down to the center of the neck, and I'm going to cross the contour here. So I'm looking up into this neck, and so I'm going to cross the contour a few times just so I can keep track of where that neck is. I want this figure to be a female. It looks like it is pushing towards being a female, and so I'm going to broaden the hips, and I'm going to lessen the ribs, okay, and lessen the shoulders. I'm liking the feeling of the proportions. It kind of feels good right now. Okay, looking up. Now, the ribs have, along the front plane, they have corners. Like at this, when you find that Pringle, the sort of turn spot for the Pringle is the corner of the ribs. Here's the corner of the hips, and here's the Pringle through the hip. Right, that's our connection point. And if I go from center to center along the sagittal plane, the belly goes like that. And so now I could start to look for contour. Looking to construct that central mass. Here's the sagittal, here's the transverse plane hip to hip. Okay, but drops down, and the sagittal line through the belly button, connecting with the, connecting here. Okay, this could get lower. The thigh, notice here's the top of the hip, and I'm going to raise it up a little bit. Feels like it wants to come up a little. There's the top of the hip. There's the top of the hip. The top of the thigh about halfway down through the box. Okay, there's the top of the thigh about halfway down through the hip box. So let me describe that a little bit. So here's the hip box. In this instance, it's going to be like this. Sorry. And then we did the Pringle shape in here, right? We cut down this way and up and around, and we cut down that way. Okay, and so we've got this corner and this corner, and then the thigh connects about here. Okay, there's like the thigh comes in and sits on this shape like this. Okay, you see how it comes up high in the front, and then as it moves around the back, it goes down low, and actually the butt overlaps over on this side. The gluteus maximus comes over and overlaps into the side plane. Okay, so here you'll have that side plane, the gluteus maximus coming onto the side plane over here, directly into the side of the leg. Like that. So back of the ribs, here's the front of the ribs, okay? Overlap. There's the front corner of the pelvis. There's the front corner of the pelvis. Drop down. There's the front of the thigh. Right there is the front of the thigh, okay? Back butt, the back of the thigh. You see the butt goes further, the back of the thigh. Okay. The thigh goes, passes, I've exaggerated this side of it. And here's the center line. There's the center. You see here's the center. There's the center. Over and down. Okay, and we'll solve the knees in a minute. Let's go a little bit. Let's put a little bit of attention. The next spot I want to put some attention is into the shoulder girdle. Okay, the shoulder girdle. Here we have underneath, we have this like rib cage structure, right? But it can be really hard to go from the rib cage out into the shoulders. So if you look for, if you think, okay, along here's the coronal plane, and it comes down that way. High and on the side, high and on the side. Okay, that's where the arm emerges from. Here's the gesture of the arm that I'm looking to do. Here's the gesture of the arm, and I'm going to add the hand gesture to this. Okay. Arm, there's a hand gesture. Okay. So I don't know what's going on here. Arm, and here's a hand gesture. And notice the use of the triangles to turn the hand upwards and downwards. So this hand, I'm looking palm side. This hand, I'm seeing the back of the hand. Okay? Now, for shoulders, we have connecting to this line from here. So here's the rib cage. Up from the rib cage and connecting out to that line is my pectoralis, okay? And over like that. There's the pectoralis muscle. Now connecting from high down to about here, like this. You see that? Down to there. Connecting from high down below there. That's about where the deltoid connects. That's about how the shoulder muscle in the front of the body connects. And it overlaps. It kind of has, it's kind of shaped like a bird head, and it overlaps, okay? And it's kind of shaped like a bird head, and it overlaps the pectoralis connection. See how that works? Okay. And now from underneath the back side of the arm, we see this bump here. For the triceps. And in the front, we'll connect to the center of the arm. You come underneath, you pass in front of the deltoid because of the way we're seeing the arm, and you connect to this line for the bicep, okay? And then along this axis, there's a cylinder for the elbow, okay? So here I'll do my bicep. The tricep I won't see. The bicep will connect here. The tricep will be back here, actually, in this instance. The bicep over this way. And then here is the direction of the cylinder for the elbow. And in this instance, the elbow is going to be back. In this instance, the elbow will be low. So you've got, for the elbow, you have the cylinder like this. And then the actual elbow is this little square that goes that way. Okay, there's this little square that comes up and grabs hold of this thing and shoots off. And then you see this and that, those 3 points. So the elbow can be cartooned like this. You've got 1, 2, 3 points, 1, 2, 3 points. And so you've got the 1, 2, 3 points. This side always connects to the pinky. Okay, so there always connects to the pinky. This side then crossing over the radius. Okay, so the elbow, pinky connection, and crossing over the radius. Thumb. Okay. Down into the knees. Okay, so to draw the knees, so if you come off the thigh, and we've talked about this part of the arm before as being like a chicken leg, like a drumstick, meaning that the top part of the arm is really fleshy. So up here, that's really fleshy. And the bottom part of the arm is really bony. And the thumb has this setback like this, and the pinky goes straight in. Okay, so you have like something like that, right? So there's the set over for the thumb, and here's the overlap for the thumb, overlap. Okay. To get to the knees, the same thing applies. Like here, the top part of the form has more muscle, okay? And then as we move into the knees, we're looking to get more boxy. As we move into the knees, we're looking to get more boxy. So I'm just flattening my approach. My approach to the knees is to begin by flattening the contours so that I start to insinuate a box. You see up here, I've insinuated a circle with these lines. And now as I move down into the knees, I'm flattening so that I insinuate a box. Okay, now look at how this center point, this would be my sagittal. Here's the sagittal right there. Now, because the center is so far, in this instance, to the left, look at my side plane. The line of the square moves along with that. And so this gives me side plane of the knee, okay? Now the side plane of the knee is where the calf overlaps with this sort of, you remember when we talked about we have a kind of like fish biting? Like this is a sort of nature of a lot of our overlapping, is we have this like biting fish head, right? So the calf, if you have your knee, it goes essentially like this. And the front side of the knee, here's the patella, it overlaps like this. The side overlaps like this. Okay? So cutting in that way. I'm going to cut in that way and out that way. And the shape of the bone underneath here is a big triangle. The shape of the leg under here is determined. This overlaps like this into this really big triangle here. You see right here is this big triangle. There's this like, it's almost like here, I want to really exaggerate it. There's this big triangle right here. Okay, and we kick out for the upper calf and in for the lower and over for the foot. And this is going to require, see, this is looking really awkward, and I'll tell you what's looking awkward about it is that the knee needs to move further in this direction. I haven't allowed the knee to get as sideways as it would need to be in this gesture. And here, I'm going to let it go that way. So this all becomes the side plane of the knee, and that's going to help a lot. So as I'm turning this, I've brought the butt so far forward, I need to take the thigh and push it this way and drop down into the plane of the knee, which will move to the left. Okay, and there's my patella, and here's my side plane overlapping, the fish mouth biting right there and creating this underside right here, which turns me into the triangle of the calf. Okay, the inside thigh into the kneecap, which overlaps this way, outside thin, overlap, up into the hip. and breast tissue underneath the pectoralis to over the pectoralis, to under it, and moving around the form with it. You can think up centers for the nipple. Okay, and that leaves trapezius. I always confuse the trapezius and the triceps. Triceps, trapezius. Up to the ear. So the neck structure is like this. Here's the cylinder of the neck. You find, in this instance, there's the center line of the cylinder of the neck, and that line locks up with the clavicles here. The center of the clavicles comes down like this. There's two muscles that come along the sides, 1, 2. So the cylinder inserts between these two muscles which connect to the clavicles, and then there's this empty hollow in here. There's this hollow in there, and the trapezius connects to the back like this. So here's the trapezius coming around and connecting to the back. Okay. So we've been over in the semester kind of all of this. And if you can just get yourself this far along, like this is no shading, the line work has not been tidied up, but if you can just get yourself this far along, I'd like for you to consider this stage of figure drawing as kind of a final. You know, don't stress out. Like, you just draw it as good as you can draw it, and that'll be fine. But I'd like for you to consider this kind of a final, like we're reviewing all of this structural information that we've been studying this semester, okay?